Hello and welcome to Women of Worth Wednesday. I'm so happy to be with you. It feels like a few weeks since we've been together, just you and I. If you're new to the Women of Worth Wednesday show, welcome. And if you're new to High Five Live, welcome. If you're watching live, please mention in the comments where you're joining us from. And if you're watching this on the replay, then I hope you feel welcomed as well and part of this amazing community. I'm so grateful for this community that has continued to build. I feel like we are a family here, and it grows every single day. And I hear from so many of you how these messages of faith have blessed you. So as you can see from the title, we're going to talk about something that you may have seen on the news. If you don't live in Utah and you don't live along the Wasatch Front, you may not have experienced the live experience, but CNN reported on it. So a few weeks ago, before 4th of July, I was in the car with my husband coming home, and it was late. It was after 11. And I actually was wearing this shirt, so I put it on to just channel to connect with all the feelings of that night. And we were on the freeway. Have you ever had this where you can feel something's off, something's gonna happen, maybe you're not sure, or something has happened? I just had that feeling, and we were on the freeway, and all of a sudden I could see a highway patrolman in front of us on the freeway, and it looked like he was speeding up and slowing down. And I didn't know if he was trying to shut the freeway down, which happens a lot in my area. I live in Lehi, if you're familiar with the Wasatch Front. And there's a ton of construction that has been going on for, it feels like 10 decades, which would be 100 years. But it wasn't. He didn't shut the freeway down. And there was just these weird things of cars darting in and out. And I was like, I had this panic feeling. And I said to my husband, something's wrong. Slow down, something's wrong. We make it home and it's fine. A few minutes later, I start to hear sirens. And I thought, that's interesting. And then they grew. We live near a fire department. And so I didn't think of anything of it for a moment. And then the sirens increased. And it went on for a good 5 minutes or so. And finally, I yelled up to my husband, something's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. And he ran out in the backyard. And a couple of miles north of us in our backyard, the mountain was on fire. My niece, her husband, her 2 young children, my sister-in-law, her mother she was visiting from Arizona at the time. They were on that mountain. Their house is, if you just went straight from our backyard and crossed Temp Highway and went up the mountain, you would hit their house. And I could see this fire. My daughter's 2 best friends lived on that mountain. The mountain is known as Traverse area. And I was panicked. There was this moment where the fire is completely engulfed in flames, and there is obviously homes everywhere. And all of a sudden, I realized how very small I felt and am in the world and in the universe. It was one of those moments where it was so massive. I just thought, I don't have the faith to move that mountain. And I started to pray immediately, but it was not enough. I was like, my prayers, even on my best day of praying, how are they going to help? And the fire was growing, and it was moving fast because the wind where we live is very intense. Come to find out, 60-mile-an-hour winds, up to 70-mile-an-hour winds at times here. And so you can imagine this mountain that we live in a desert, and it's been very dry. It had been 3 weeks since we had rain or any significant moisture, and the wind was out of control, and I just felt overwhelmed. And all I knew what to do is keep praying and go grab my phone and reach out to my social media connections. And I grabbed my phone in my pajamas. The wind is crazy. Listen, you guys, I've been sharing content on video series like this one. I host 2 other shows. I am on TV and radio. I do speaking events. I have CDs. I have put so much content out there to try to help in my little way to build the kingdom. But this video probably will go down in history as, you know, my most shared. Within 2 hours, this video plea received 45,000 views and was shared over 200 times. Now, I know that's not the 2-3 million viral levels, but it was a plea. That's all I knew what to do is. So I pull out my phone and I share with whoever's watching, I need you to pray. I'm thinking it may be 20 people. I need everyone who's watching this to pray. And I switch directions on the camera so they can see this fire. And I plead for prayer. That's it. That's all I knew what to do. And within moments, thousands of you were joining in prayer. And other people on social media, not just me, went on their platforms to ask for prayer for this mountain, for this fire, for these families, for these firemen. And it worked. My friends, it worked. Eventually, my niece, her family evacuated and stayed with us for the night. We didn't sleep, you know. We went up to, we have multiple stories in our bedroom. It was the best vantage point. We were up till 3 a.m. at least. And they had gotten word that multiple homes had been lost, which proved to not be true, thankfully. But can you imagine, as they're watching, they evacuated with their 2 babies, their 2 bottles, and that's it. No phone chargers, no extra clothes, no toothbrush, no nothing. And we had lots of discussion about what's the most important and what would you do and what do you think of in those moments. And all I knew is to keep praying. And I couldn't tell if the prayers were working, right? It really wasn't until the next day. So the thick ash and the smoke were so bad at our home a few miles south that we couldn't go outside. The house in our home was smelling like a fire was in our home. That's how intense it was. So when I woke up Sunday morning and saw that my house wasn't covered in ash, my yard, you know, had survived this windstorm, and I looked up on the mountain, I could still see the Black Hawk helicopters and the smoke, but I could see this line. And later, it was when a sheriff posted on his social media that he remembers a moment. And it was soon after that plea for prayer went viral, not just from me, but from many people, that he said the wind stopped just for a moment so the firemen could get a handle. There were children still hiking up on the mountain that they weren't sure how to find them. There were thousands of people trying to get off the mountain to evacuate. Now I share this story and I posted an update the very next day. Within 24 hours, another fire south of us started. 13,000 acres at the time were burning, and homes and thousands of people had to evacuate. And there's video out there of that fire. This is the Saratoga fire, and I think they called it something fancier than that. But as I posted this update, someone commented about a fire last year, if you're familiar with the Paradise Valley fire in California. This is where I grew up. I grew up in the Yuba City, Marysville area. My cousin lived in Paradise, and that fire is very tender to me. A whole town was lost. And this person posted, what about the prayers of the people in Paradise? It didn't work for them. They lost everything, and their whole town was destroyed. And what I wanted to share today is this. The power of prayer, we have to talk about it, because when you're in the moment and there's a fire and you're thinking, whatever the fire is, it's a divorce, it's a job loss, it's addiction of your son, it's eating disorder, it's depression, it's anxiety, it's a faith question, whatever the fire is in your life, it's oftentimes this struggle of, is this prayer going to work? Is it enough? How can my little prayer help with this big fire in my life? And oftentimes we feel like our fires destroy our lives, like in the Paradise Family's lives. And then other people's prayers for those exact issues are preserved, like in Traverse Mountain and Saratoga. And all I can say is, I believe in the power of prayer. I believe in the power of prayer, in that God hears all of them and he answers all of them. But in his wisdom and righteousness and love for us, his children, he allows some prayers, as Garth Brooks says, to be unanswered in the way we think. I don't believe any prayer is unanswered. I think sometimes we see the answers much later. I know for my cousin who lost everything, the recovery process has been long, but it's been beautiful. There's been miracles along the way. And the loss is not to be understated that those families experienced. But how often we stop praying because we're thinking our prayer isn't enough. And I think it's important to share messages of faith and hope any chance we have, so that when we find ourselves at the base of the mountain and the fire is overwhelming us, that we don't hesitate to pray. But not only that, that we don't hesitate to ask for others to help. I felt my faith was not big enough. I needed whoever was on the other end of this phone to pray with me. And you did. You all showed up and you prayed. And in this case, the line comes right to that first line of homes and stops. And that massive wind stopped. I've thought of, in the last week, as we've watched 2 fires burn in our area, of stories of fires in the scriptures. Shadrach, Meshach, and his brothers were saved in the fire. The fire burned the ropes off of them, but they were unharmed. Then you switch over to the Book of Mormon. Abinadi was burned in the fire. He was not rescued. Did God not hear his prayers? But there was purpose in that fire and in his death and in his mission. And I don't understand, otherwise I don't claim to. I'm just here to say that in God's mercy, he hears our prayers and he's answering them, even if the answer isn't to stop the fire in our lives. And as we watch it sometimes burn up our lives, like with Shadrach and his brothers, the ropes of our soul and our spirits are burned. But in prayer, we can be protected. I believe that in Abinadi's case, he was encompassed about in the power and love of God. And for me, recently, I've struggled with some other fires that are personal. That feel like they're raging and burning in my soul. And all I can say to you is that in many cases, what's burning away hurts. And what's burning away is necessary. In my learning and in my faith journey and in my conversion, which I work on every day. So if you find yourself in a fire and you're yelling at me right now through your screen, it's not working, prayers aren't working, I hope you'll take faith and strength from this story. Ask others to join you in prayer. Ask others to strengthen your faith where it feels weak, like I did on that Saturday night a few weeks ago. And if you find that the fire keeps raging, and like with Abinadi, you lose everything, maybe your life, trust that God's power and mercy and love for you has not been diminished, but that your mission is being moved forward. Abinadi was a mighty prophet. From his testimony came one convert. And from that one convert, Alma converted, through the words of Christ, many. You may feel like your life is in ashes and that what's been burned and destroyed is never to be rebuilt. But there are many stories from friends and family of the area in Paradise where they've testified of the tender mercies, the learning, the connection, their faith growing in the wake of that destruction and that fire. My prayer for each of us is that as we navigate all that is to come, as we prepare for the Savior, that we will trust that God is burning away in our lives the things that don't serve us, and that our missions are individually being moved forward even when it looks like total destruction around us. My prayer is that we will reach out more profoundly and more purposefully in asking for help from our faith friends to pray with us when our arms are weary. I think of Aaron as he held up Moses's arms on that mountain so that the faith could be sustained. And sometimes we need that. I need that. So many here at this community of Women of Worth Wednesday do that for me. And I hope that you will share this video today with someone that needs to be reminded that prayer works. If you look on the ad for this Women of Worth message, you'll see a picture of that fire, of that mountain and the homes and where the fire stopped. I hope that you will feel strengthened and loved in this message today. And we'll see you again next week here on Women of Worth Wednesday.